Okay, this video is our second half of the Illustrator techniques idea. We're going to pick up where we left off the other day, which is number 8. We're going to try to utilize clip art inside of Adobe Illustrator. So to do that, let me get a new file going here. So a place to practice. And we're going to need to get into our clip art goodies folder. So if you go into graphics, here's our clip art goodies neighborhood. So I've got a few things for you guys to check out here and there. The one you're after today is one called vector images. So if you double click on it, it's going to uncompress and show up on your desktop like you inserted a CD. These designs were made in a program called CorelDRAW a few years back, but it's pretty much still the same idea. So let's go in and check out what the computers looked like back in 1997. But you can see there's all kinds of clip art and things you can work with. So I'm going to go into one of these little neighborhoods here, and then to make sure it goes to Illustrator, I'm going to right click and get an open with, and then choose Illustrator. So a right click would be a better choice, because it might open in that other program called Preview. So anyway, once you get in there, you can kind of see what you get. You basically get objects that are made out of the same things you're used to working with. So made out of vector shapes. You're starting to get a feel for how to modify vector shapes and how to piece them together. But here's kind of what you get. You get all these little goodies that are ready to roll. So using clip art is a snap. You can modify what's there. You can copy and paste them into other projects. So it's a pretty easy process. So I'll just copy it from this one file, switch over to my little demo file, and then paste it in there. But it's pretty cool, because then you don't have to build everything from scratch. Granted, this stuff is a little bit dated. It's a little bit of a cartoony type of look. But if you have needs to, say for instance, have a green floppy disk or a yellow floppy disk, you can change all those features, or you need to modify the shape. So it's a good resource. You don't have to build everything from scratch all the time in Illustrator, just like we got pretty good at doing stuff off the internet. So just delete my file. I will go ahead and pick up on this one then. So that takes care of using clip art, but you'll probably copy and paste it to put it into other projects. Okay, let's see. What do you got here? Number 9. Use a filter to distort a photo type image. So this is like a Photoshop type filter. Basically, it really is. So let me jump on the internet real fast and grab a photo. We'll paste it in there, and you'll see you have the same access to the same ideas that you did in Photoshop. Now, granted, you're not going to be able to isolate and do all the things you did in Photoshop. It's not designed to really do that. But you have some of the easier ideas. Let me pick this nice looking wave here and copy it, and we'll paste it in there. I think actually I should go to the big one to reinforce that idea. You get the bigger quality, the better image quality, the more you have to work with. But let me copy it back in Illustrator. We'll paste it in there. So that was pretty big. That one was a pretty high-res file. Let me get it down into at least ballpark size. So, but this really is a technique that is more of a Photoshop technique that they integrated into Illustrator. So under Effect, that's what they call the Photoshop type filters. So here are Photoshop effects, and once you get going, you'll notice this looks very similar, pretty much identical to what you experience inside of Photoshop itself. So that turned out kind of pretty right there. But you can still manipulate the little variables that make each filter, or they call them effect, work that way. But definitely you can still do some of the same Photoshop type looks. If you get a lot of Photoshop needs, you're probably better off going into Photoshop, do all that work over there, and then bring it back. But on occasion, it's pretty cool to have some of our Photoshop tricks built into the same program. All right, so that takes care of that one. Make sure you save your file as you go here. Let's see, that is number 9, so we're on to number 10. That one's piece of cake. They have a whole bunch of basically what are called, they call them symbols. So under Window, if you find the symbols library or window, it'll probably start to make sense. Well, it would make sense if I had some in there. Let me see if I can add some in there. Here are some symbols I can work with. But they're basically pre-built little objects you can work with. Let me see if I can get, let's see. Normally that tool has a whole bunch to start off with, but I'm gonna open up another library and we'll make sense of it from there. But you got flowers, you got all kinds of weird stuff, and these guys are pretty much drag and drop. So once you put them in there, you can resize them. I believe you can break them apart, yeah, and you can then edit them. They'll be basically shapes you can then modify yourself, similar to what we did with the clip art. But those are known as symbols in this program, and it's kind of built-in clip art. And again, if you don't have much to choose from, like mine was empty, find other symbol libraries, and you can even find things like sushi. I don't know if you're going to need sushi, but anyway, here's some sushi rolls made out of vectors. So anyway, a little bit different. I'll delete that one. All right, that takes care of another one of our techniques. So, all right, number 12 is another easy idea. You're used to that one. Actually, it's number 11. 11 is a graphic style. That's pretty similar to what you did in Photoshop using layer styles, but this is called a graphic style. So let me demonstrate with just a shape or perhaps maybe even a star or something. That would be probably a good idea. Give it some color so you can see it. All right, now there is a window called Graphic Styles, and yeah, I don't have much to choose from on this one either. Let me load up my library on this machine. So same story, you got other libraries you can use. So some of these will do different types of looks, but they can add textures and patterns and all kinds of cool stuff to whatever you make. So here's a brick type of pattern or texture. You can see there's other things available. But just remember, you have a whole bunch of other ones you can load as far as the library or your resources. There's tons of them you can choose from. And then, some are going to be better design options for doing web buttons and things like that. So, but it's a pretty cool look. So you can use these all over the place. And that is what's known as a graphic style. So anything that you make, including text, can adopt those styles. So let me blow that up so you can see that a little easier. But if you're trying to do cool, fancy stuff like you did in Photoshop, we don't have the same kind of exact tools, but you have some similar concepts, and then you can probably learn how to manipulate these as well. Okay, so that is what's called a graphic style. The next one that I said you probably already could do was transparency. That's the same thing you learned in Photoshop as far as controlling the opacity of a layer, but we have a transparency window to worry about. So let me go ahead and just, I already got something on the screen here. I'll use this this wave image that I have, and if you wanted to make it semi-see-through so you can see through it, let me arrange it and stack it on the top here, bring to front, and then if I wanted to be able to see that star in the background, we can do it several ways. You have an option up here in the options area, so there's an opacity slider built in. This is kind of a new one. It wasn't in the last generation. We used to have to use a window called transparency, which is just as easy to figure out once you see it. I know you're familiar with that term from before, but you can make objects be semi-transparent. Now you can't do the control like you did for making composite images in Photoshop, so you don't have complete control over an image, but as far as layers and objects, you pretty much, you can make them fade in or be, transparent or solid. But that is how you could then get a little bit of a different look. A lot of times our Illustrator stuff looks quite different because we can't use all the same techniques from Photoshop. But once you see there's some pretty big similarities, you might do some things that kind of have a look that uses both styles together. So that is the opacity slider either here from the transparency window, or whenever you're on an object, you can slide it up here too. Piece of cake. All right, next technique. Photoshop file with transparency. All right, that one's a little bit trickier to demonstrate with. That one, I don't know if I have, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to go ahead and launch Photoshop and I'll come back to it so I don't have to wait on the video while that's loading. But basically what we're going to do is, you guys have learned how to make knockouts. So you take an object and you knock out the background. We're going to try to preserve that transparency and then bring it into Illustrator by using a file place command. And that way you can keep the transparency. If you copy and paste something from Photoshop, even if it had a transparent layer, it would show up with a big white background or box. So it's probably not what we want to try to do. So I'll make a real simple example here real fast, and then we can show you how that works out. And then we'll see if I can battle through my live paint and live trace. I think I'm pretty good at live trace. Live paint I don't do so often, so we'll see how that goes. But let me show you this transparency thing real fast. I want to make a new Photoshop file real quick and just get something to play with here. But anything can have that kind of knockout look. So I'm going to make a text layer here just for some practice. It would be nice if we can see it though, yeah? Probably could have fixed that earlier. But anyway, here's the text that I had there. I put a layer style on it. This might be an interesting test for us too, to see how well this turns out when we bring it into the other program. But pretty much, the only thing I would be worried about would be the kind of the drop shadow idea. So here is our object. I'm going to get rid of this background layer. But what we're trying to do is keep something that has a transparent background. So whether you take a knockout of an object, so you knock the background out, or you take a player or a person or an object, and you take them out of the foreground and you put them into a Photoshop file, whatever it happens to be, you're going to try to leave it transparent. So again, we can't copy and paste, but we can save a file that's a Photoshop document that has transparency and then place it, and you'll see that the trick is. So this will be an interesting test. Let me go ahead and save this file. So this is my Photoshop file that has some kind of transparency kind of concept to it. I'll just put that on my desktop real quick. And then let's see what happens when we use a different command. So again, if I can prove the point to, let's see. Yeah, I think I'll go this route. Let me show you. Once I go to File, Place, I should be able to get an object into this thing that lets me keep the transparency. This is a good option though here. Link, maybe want to uncheck that. So that way it doesn't keep a relationship between the files. It actually embeds the file into this Illustrator file. So that might be a good one to uncheck. But let me place that same file that we looked at a second ago. And let's see. My preview. Yeah, there you go. This is test. Convert layers. I don't want any. I think that's all good. Let's see what happens there. Yeah, so I got it transparent. It didn't export out the white background layer. Kind of gave me some options that I don't know if I could figure out how to do exactly inside of this program. But again, it's probably more relative to you guys when you take an object such as a football and you knock it out of the background and you want to use just that football inside of Photoshop. But that is the trick. You'd have to file and then place a Photoshop file. Because I'll show you one more time, perhaps if we do a slightly different variation on this Photoshop file. Let me make a new layer real quick and put something on that layer real quick. Perhaps we just fill that little piece in with some color. That should prove the point for you. Let's see, our paint bucket, or how about a gradient? Let's do a gradient on there. All right, so what we got is, if we wanted, again, keep transparent areas, what you can see here, if I grab everything off of a layer and I copy it, I go back into Photoshop land, it's probably going to paste in a big white box. Oh, I just made a light already. Let me try it again. Maybe that's a new version of that. Sorry, I'm clicking away like crazy. That actually looked at it like it did a better job on that one. What we found, you know what, it might be okay in this. I think the example that I was thinking of is whenever you get a locked JPEG, the JPEGs will always put that white background in there. But I think you can kind of see the general idea that I was trying to get across. We want to keep the transparency, and if it is a file that has a background area, that might be better off to File, Place, and you can keep the transparency. Although it did look like it, did a nice job of just getting in what I wanted a second ago. So I might have been a little bit misleading, but it's still not a bad technique to use a File, Place. All right, let me try one more, and then I'm going to have to stop on the live paint one and catch that one on you guys next time. So the live trace one is a pretty cool one. Let me see if I can find an image off the internet of maybe somebody's smiling face or something kind of cool to basically try to trace. This wave one might be a little bit tricky to work with. So let me see if I can find a smiling face of some sort. Might be a good example. But we're trying to, I don't know if you guys remember when we first introduced the Illustrator to you, but we have the ability to turn things into those outline type of shapes. And I think from our model, we showed you guys one of somebody done a long time ago of I think Mary Kate and Ashley or something, but it would turn out really, really cool. So let me borrow one of our subjects here. How about this little cute guy here? All right, so I'm going to borrow his image, or her image, sorry, I don't know. And then I'm going to paste it into Illustrator land. And we're going to use a tool in here to help us trace this and turn it into outline shapes. And then we can edit and modify. But here's the story. That live paint one I was talking about, I was going to skip over that one. But we're going to use live trace, and we can live trace, make and expand on that little dude. And then let's see what we get. So this kind of made some funky stuff. You got somewhat of that look. Not a very good job. So let's undo that, and let's try the option that allows you to see a little bit along the way. So again, that was object live trace. But let's try these tracing options first, because that first attempt was not very pretty. What this does for you, it allows you to see kind of a preview of what you're getting, and then you can modify some of these options. So if you want to do like full color and get it to break into color blocks versus black and white, you can decide how many colors you want to use in this situation. But that one's pretty cool. That was definitely kind of the route we want to go to. So let me go ahead and trace that one. And then here's the final key kind of bonus point is it's now, let me break it apart here. Ungroup maybe? Let me see, I thought I was going to get the other part. Under Object Live Trace, let me see if I can do the expand part. That's the part where normally you would have to do to be able to edit and modify it. Okay, so that little preview didn't do both parts, but here you can kind of see what the story is now. I can take these little parts and I can customize the colors and the features. So if you like basically what it did, but you want to modify it a little bit more, you should be able to go in and kind of create your own ideas. So that's pretty similar to what you've seen in that Barack Obama poster from his run a couple years ago. That same poster was that same kind of look. So let me make an attempt on that one more time since it wasn't so smooth. But the preview option under Live Trace is this tracing options. Once you got, if you have that nailed and you got the right look here, if that's, where you're headed, if you got that set up, I think you can, let me see if that'll work. I know if I trace it now, we got that a second ago. Let me cancel and see if those new settings would be applied. So Live Trace, make and expand. All right, we're back to the color. So I think what you'd still have to do is the same option, which is try the tracing options, mess with whatever options you want to, adopt to it. And then you'd have to do one other step, which is to break it apart so you could then edit it. I normally do that in one shot, but my settings are not kind of so nice. So here's the expand part. All right, so that is it. We'll try to cover the live paint one on another episode, but that should wrap it up for this one. Okay.